Cleo Harrington had always found solace in the orderly world of museums. As the director of a prestigious institution, she spent her days surrounded by artifacts that told stories of the past, each one carefully catalogued and preserved behind glass. She loved the quiet hum of the galleries, the soft footsteps of visitors, and the satisfying click of her heels on polished marble floors. Archaeology, however, was a different beast entirely. It was messy, unpredictable, and filled with the kind of gritty fieldwork that she had never been drawn to. Her father and brother, on the other hand, lived for it. They thrived on the dust, the heat, and the thrill of unearthing something that had been buried for millennia. Cleo respected their passion, but she had no desire to share it. Her life was orderly, controlled, and exactly the way she wanted it. That all changed when her father called her in a frenzy. His voice crackled over the phone line, thick with excitement, and barely contained urgency. He didn't give her time to ask questions. He just demanded that she drop everything and fly to Egypt immediately. Something about a discovery. Something so monumental that he couldn't explain it over the phone. Cleo tried to protest, but her father was not the kind of man who took no for an answer, especially when he was this animated. Reluctantly, she packed a bag, booked a flight, and found herself stepping off a plane into the blistering heat of the Egyptian desert. The excavation site was remote, miles away from any semblance of civilization. The drive from the airport took hours, and by the time Cleo arrived, she was exhausted and irritable. The site itself was a hive of activity. Workers in khaki clothing swarmed over the ruins of a massive temple that was slowly being uncovered from the sand. Dust hung in the air, and the sun beat down mercilessly. Cleo spotted her father in the distance, his face flushed with excitement, but before she could reach him, he waved her off and gestured toward a man standing nearby. That man was Ramses. Ramses was tall, broad-shouldered, and undeniably handsome in a way that seemed almost dangerous. He wore sunglasses that obscured his eyes, and his expression was unreadable. There was an air of mystery about him that made Cleo's instincts prickle with both curiosity and wariness. He introduced himself with a lazy smile that didn't quite reach his lips, and Cleo immediately felt a flicker of irritation. She didn't appreciate being treated like a lost tourist, and she certainly didn't appreciate the way he seemed to be sizing her up. Their first encounter set the tone for everything that followed. Cleo was stubborn and fiercely independent, and she resented being handed off like a piece of luggage. Ramses, for his part, seemed to take delight in getting under her skin. He was cocky, evasive, and far too comfortable with pushing her buttons. Every conversation felt like a battle of wills, and yet, there was something about him that drew her in. She couldn't explain it, but whenever he was near, she felt a strange warmth radiating from the small birthmark on her shoulder, a mark that had never bothered her before. One evening, after a long day of exploring the temple ruins, Ramses removed his sunglasses. Cleo had expected something ordinary, but what she saw took her breath away. One of his eyes was a deep, piercing blue, while the other shimmered like molten gold. It was unnerving and beautiful at the same time. She didn't flinch or recoil. Instead, she found herself captivated. And when he reached out and touched her shoulder, his fingers grazing the birthmark, she experienced a wave of pleasure so intense that her knees nearly buckled. He seemed to know exactly what he was doing, and that knowledge terrified her. Her father eventually gave her a small, ancient diary that had been found deep within the temple. It was weathered and fragile, its pages filled with faded hieroglyphics. According to her father, it was the personal diary of the sun god Ra himself. Cleo dismissed this as fanciful speculation, but as she began to decipher the text, she found herself drawn into a world of gods and mortals, of bonds and bloodlines that could not be broken. The diary spoke of marks that bound humans to gods, of fates that were written in the stars. Unbeknownst to Cleo, Ramses was not just a mysterious dig worker. He was Ra in human form, a god who had walked the earth for millennia. He had come to Egypt to hunt down his treacherous brother, Horus, who had escaped from his divine prison and was plotting to destroy him. The diary was real, and it held secrets that Horus desperately wanted. More than that, Horus sought Ra's heart, an object of immense power that could undo the sun god forever. When Horus appeared to Cleo at the museum, she was shaken to her core. He was charming in a way that felt dangerous, and he kissed her without warning, leaving her stunned and confused. He whispered an ancient phrase in her ear, "Let the unknown be seen." She didn't understand its meaning, but she knew that she had been pulled into a conflict far beyond her comprehension. Ramses was furious when he learned of the encounter. He knew his brother was manipulating Cleo, using her as a pawn to get to him. But Cleo was no longer just a bystander. The mark on her shoulder was the Eye of Ra, a symbol that marked her as belonging to the god. She was bound to him in a way that transcended mortal understanding. And despite Ramses's efforts to keep her at a distance, his feelings for her grew stronger with each passing day. As Cleo delved deeper into the diary, the truth became undeniable. She was not merely a woman caught in the middle of a divine war. She was destined to be Ra's mate, his partner, his anchor in the mortal world. The bond between them could never be severed, and her fate was now intertwined with his. Horus made his intentions brutally clear. He demanded that Ramses deliver the soul of King Tutankhamun to him, or he would take Cleo instead. Ramses refused, vowing to protect her at all costs, even if it meant destroying his own brother. But Cleo refused to be a passive victim. She consulted her old friend Star, a witch who confirmed the truth of her bond with Ra. Star warned her that her journey was only beginning, but Cleo was determined to face it head-on. When she overheard Ramses speaking with his sister Marie, who was actually the goddess Bastet, the full scope of the deception became clear. Ramses was the god she had been reading about, the one whose mark she bore, the one she was bound to for eternity. She confronted him, demanding the truth, and he admitted everything. He told her that the mark was not a curse but a gift, and that he loved her not because of destiny, but because of who she was. Cleo was overwhelmed, but she was not the same woman who had stepped off the plane weeks ago. She had grown braver, stronger, and more certain of what she wanted. And what she wanted was Ramses. She chose to stay, to fight alongside him, to face whatever the future held. Together they would confront Horus and the war that was to come. The stage was set for an epic confrontation. Ramses had found his heart in Cleo, and Horus would stop at nothing to destroy that bond. But Cleo was no longer a bystander. She was the key to everything, and she was ready to embrace her fate.